Buying a mattress today feels less like shopping and more like applying for a mortgage on a rectangle. Memory foam, cooling gel, orthopedic zones, a 100-night trial, and somehow a pillow that costs more than a goat. But for nearly all of human history, nobody had a bed showroom. No springs, no fitted sheets, no tiny tag threatening legal consequences. So how did ancient humans sleep without waking up as a frozen, insect-covered appetizer? The obvious answer is on the ground. But that's a little like saying humans crossed oceans in wood. Technically true, impressively unhelpful. Our ancestors didn't just collapse wherever gravity placed them. They chose locations, built sleeping surfaces, controlled fire, used plants, shared protection. But before beds could exist, they had to solve a more urgent problem: how to sleep deeply without being eaten. For millions of years, the safest answer was probably up. Many living apes build sleeping platforms in trees, bent branches into surprisingly sturdy nests. Chimpanzees choose flexible branches, arrange them into a bowl, and add leaves on top. Basically custom furniture, except the delivery crew is also the customer. Tree sleeping made sense for smaller primates. Elevation meant fewer predators, insects, and damp ground. But as our ancestors got bigger and better at walking upright, sleeping in trees got less convenient. A heavy-bodied hominin balancing on branches isn't majestic. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Ground sleeping, however, created a brutal trade. The ground was easier to reach, easier to gather around, and much better for social groups. It was also where the lions lived. To make ground sleep possible, early humans needed technology, cooperation, and a nightly skill we still use today, turning a dangerous environment into a controlled little bubble. Fire was probably the biggest change. Warmth, light, smoke, and less appeal to nocturnal predators. It also extended social time after sunset, eating, repairing tools, caring for children, and figuring out who had heard that suspicious rustling noise. Shelter choice mattered too. A rock overhang blocked wind and rain. Elevated dry ground kept sleepers from becoming part of the local drainage system. Even without walls, location was architecture. Then there was group size. More people meant more ears, more noses, more chances someone woke up in time. Different people naturally slept at different times. Some stayed up late, others rose early. In a small camp, that overlap may have created near-constant watchfulness without anyone planning it. No official night shift, no clipboard, just biology quietly doing its job. Once fire, cooperation, and safer camps made ground sleeping possible, comfort became the next project. They picked dry spots, avoided the wind, gathered soft plants. The first bed wasn't furniture, it was a strategy. The earliest beds were probably discovered the same way humans discover most things. Someone got tired of being uncomfortable. The ground steals heat, collects moisture, and hides rocks with suspicious accuracy beneath your spine. A thick layer of dry grass felt warmer than bare soil. Leaves added softness. Reeds created airflow. Animal hides blocked wind and cold. Nobody had to invent comfort from nothing. They only had to copy what nature already did. Birds built nests. Rodents lined burrows. Great apes arranged branches and leaves into platforms. Humans came from that same tradition. The tree nest simply became the floor nest. But ground bedding had one major flaw. It became disgusting. Night after night it collected sweat, food scraps, shed skin, and insects. Fleas didn't see this as a hygiene problem. They saw it as urban development. Early bedding was probably temporary, regularly replaced or simply burned. Burning removed waste, killed parasites, and left ash, far less welcoming to bugs than damp grass. Smoke helped too. Unpleasant for humans, worse for mosquitoes. They didn't need insect chemistry, just the observation. Sleep near this plant, scratch less at night. This is where bedding stops looking like luck and starts looking like knowledge. One person notices dry sedges are softer. Another learns green branches smoke too much. Someone discovers an aromatic leaf that keeps insects away. The knowledge gets remembered, copied, taught. Over generations, a sleeping place becomes a constructed environment. No privacy, no silence. Almost certainly no rule against eating where you slept. But the principle was already familiar. Prepare the world beneath you before lying down. Grass doesn't usually survive 2,000 years. That's what makes Border Cave remarkable. Located in the Lubombo Mountains, on the border of South Africa and Eswatini. Researchers found microscopic traces of grass bedding dating back at least 2,000 years. Plant remains were concentrated toward the rear of the shelter, a deliberate sleeping zone. Much of it rested on layers of ash, possibly placed there on purpose. Fine ash can clog the breathing systems of ticks and absorb moisture, built-in pest control. Researchers also found fragments of camphor bushwood among the bedding. Camphor plants produce compounds that can repel insects. Nobody can prove exactly why it was there. Maybe fuel, maybe deliberate. The bugs aren't talking. Border Cave also had burned grass and charred material, old bedding, cleared by fire. Not modern housekeeping, but repeated management of domestic space, surprisingly sophisticated. Sibudu, another South African rock shelter, makes the pattern even clearer. Around 77,000 years ago, people built bedding from sedges and broad-leaved grasses. Some layers were topped with leaves from Cryptocarya woodii, a tree with insect-killing chemicals. By 58,000 years ago, bedding at Sibudu was being burned regularly, like routine camp maintenance. Multiple compacted layers of plant material, ash, and debris, the floor was renewed again and again. These sites can't give us a full prehistoric bedroom. Hides and frames may have existed and simply rotted away, but the evidence is enough to overturn the idea of ancient humans just passing out on bare stone. 2,000 years ago, people were choosing sleep zones, laying vegetation, managing insects, cleaning with fire. They didn't sleep without beds, they slept without furniture stores. What we can't know for sure is exactly how they experienced the night itself. One popular idea: ancient humans slept in two phases, waking for a quiet stretch in the middle of the night. Historical records describe a first sleep and second sleep, with people praying, talking, or working in between. But those records don't prove every prehistoric human slept that way. Sleep patterns were shaped by latitude, season, temperature, light, labor, danger, and culture. A winter camp in Ice Age Europe likely had a very different rhythm than a tropical camp near the equator. People without electric light didn't necessarily sleep the moment the sun went down. They stayed up around fires, socialized, and slept hours later, flexible, not rigid. Predators, rival groups, crying infants, and bad weather didn't respect anyone's bedtime. Natural differences in age and sleep type may have created near-continuous nighttime alertness in a group. Plausible, but not a fossilized security schedule. We also can't be sure how ancient people actually slept, curled for warmth, beside fires, leaning on cave walls. A sleeping area might become a butchering area the next day, and a tool repair spot after dinner. Prehistoric life didn't come with floor plans. The safest conclusion? Our ancestors didn't have one perfect method. They adapted, constantly. Once ground sleeping became safer, sleep stopped being just biology. It became a social event. Sleeping close together reduced heat loss and made it easier to protect infants and elders. A child waking in the dark didn't have to search for help. Help was 2 feet away. After dark, movement got harder and the group got closer, creating space for stories and teaching. A memorable story about a crocodile near the river stuck better than any safety manual ever could. As settlements grew permanent, sleeping areas became more structured, floors cleaned, hearths placed, platforms raised. But the most important invention wasn't the frame or the mattress. It was trust. Every shared sleeping place was a small social contract, renewed each night, civilization practiced in the dark. Today we sleep in climate-controlled boxes on engineered foam, but the old logic is still there. Control the environment, then surrender to sleep. It started with a pile of grass, with excellent marketing potential.